Alma Angeles. Welcome to Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the news. Here are the top stories tonight.
The regional threat.
The UN General Assembly adopted a resolution which calls on the Myanmar armed forces to immediately stop all violence against peaceful demonstrators and civilians and calls on countries to prevent the flow of arms into the country.
Congratulations poured in for Iranian ultra-conservative cleric Ebrahim Raisi on Saturday for winning presidential elections, even before official results were announced.
And the DOH Technical Advisory Group member Edsel Salvana reported that 13 Delta variant cases were detected in the country, all from returning Filipino travelers.
And Governor John Bell Edwards has issued a state of emergency due to the potential weather threats associated with potential tropical cyclone 3, a tropical system expected to impact the Gulf Coast this week.
Is still there. And I want to say that because we have...
First, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution which calls on the Myanmar armed forces to immediately stop all violence against peaceful demonstrators and civilians and calls on countries to prevent the flow of arms into the country. Kristen Schreiner-Bergener, UN Special Envoy for Myanmar, briefed the General Assembly to follow the adoption of the resolution, and she said there can be no business as usual under the current circumstances in Myanmar.
The regional threat of the crisis is real. We must continue to call for maximum restraint and condemn all forms of violence. The risk of a large-scale civil war is real. Time is of the essence. The opportunity to reverse the military takeover is narrowing and regional threat increasing.
It was approved by 119 countries, with 36 abstaining, including China, Myanmar's main ally. Only one country, Belarus, voted against it. The resolution was not passed by consensus, as had been hoped, but rather through a vote forcing all 193 UN countries to reveal their views. Among the countries that abstained were Russia and Mali, where a second military coup in less than a year recently took place, Iran and Egypt and Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. The UN General Assembly very rarely adopts resolutions condemning military coups or calling for limits on the arms supply to the target country. Myanmar's ambassador, who is aligned with the National Unity Government, welcomed the resolution, saying that he hoped it would help pressure the military to stop their inhumane acts, but was disappointed it fell far short of our expectations. Ambassador Kyaw Mo Tun said it had been more than 130 days since the coup, and there was no sign the brutal military crackdown was easy.
UN Special Envoy for Myanmar, Christine Schreiner-Bergener, urged the Security Council to speak in unity, as half the population is expected to live under the poverty line by next year if the situation continues. Take a look.
We expect, if the situation continues like that we have next year around the half of the population will live under the poverty line. So I urged the Council to speak in unity and especially against violence, and also that the political prisoners will be released as quickly as possible.
ASEAN has led diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis in Myanmar, but the regional bloc is not known for its diplomatic clout, and observers have questioned how effectively it can influence events in the country. Brunei is the ASEAN chair for 2021. The last Security Council meeting on Myanmar took place on April 30. In a unanimous statement, the Council's 15 members called for an immediate end to violence in Myanmar, as stated in an ASEAN plan. The plan also called for the naming of an ASEAN envoy tasked with handling the crisis. but so far no one has been named to that position.
Meanwhile, congratulations poured in for Iranian ultra-conservative cleric Ebrahim Raisi on Saturday for winning the presidential elections, even before official results were announced. Iran's outgoing moderate president Hassan Rouhani said his successor had been elected in the previous day's vote, without naming the widely expected winner, Raisi. Raisi, the head of the judiciary, whose black turban signifies direct descent from Islam's prophet Muhammad, is seen as close to the 81-year-old supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has ultimate political power in Iran. Raisi, who holds deeply conservative views on many social issues, including the role of women in public life, has been named in Iranian media as a possible successor to Khamenei. Ultimate power in Iran since its 1979 revolution toppled the U.S.-backed monarchy rests with the supreme leader, but the president wields major influence in areas from industrial policy to foreign affairs. Hassan Rouhani, meanwhile, 72 years old, leaves office in August after serving the maximum 2 consecutive 4-year terms allowed under the Constitution. His landmark achievement was the 2015 deal with world powers, under which Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program in return for sanctions relief. But high hopes for greater prosperity were crushed in 2018 when then U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from the accord and launched a maximum pressure campaign against Iran.
A health official on Saturday said the Delta variant, first recognized in India, is 40 to 60% more transmissible than the Alpha variant that was detected in the United Kingdom. Department of Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire also noted that patients infected with the Delta variant are more prone to stay longer in hospitals compared to those who contracted the other variants. Take a look.
Pero ngayon, sa nangyayari sa buong mundo with this Delta variant, ang kanilang naoobserbahan, unang-una, sinabi na talaga that it is 40 to 60% more transmissible than the UK variant. So ibig sabihin po, Yusek Rocky, yung UK variant natin, yung Alpha variant, na talagang 60% na siya more transmissible. On top of that, itong Delta variant, 60% more than the UK variant. Mabilis po talaga siyang mag-spread. Pangalawa, yung iba naman kung na-oobserbahan natin, and based from articles, mas prone ang patient na ma-ospital. Ibig sabihin, pag ikaw ay nagka-Delta variant, yung probability na ma-ospital ka ay mataas kaysa compared to the other variants. Meron din pong sinasabi na meron hong iba na naka-ospital, mas nagiging may sakit ba yung tumatagal po ang kanilang pagkaka-ospital, and yung kanilang mga inflammatory markers ay talagang mataas. So ibig sabihin po talaga that it is causing severe infections as well. Katulad po ng sinabi ng WHO, we really are seeing na ito po ay nagiging dominant in other countries like that of UK. Nagsabi na po sila na yung variants po na present sa kanilang bansa ngayon is almost 90% na are Delta variants. That's why they're having the surge. So ang ating pong pinapaalala lang sa ating local government units, katulad ng lagi namin sinasabi from the start, no matter what variants we have, kung gagawin po natin ng maayos yung ating PDITR response, atin pong ipapatupad ng maayos ang minimum public health standards at magpapabakuna po tayo kung eligible na tayo. Ito po ang kaya po natin gawin para ma-prevent natin from having this variant being dominant here in the country.
On Friday, DOH Technical Advisory Group member Dr. Edsel Salvana reported the 13 Delta variant cases were already detected in the country, all from returning Filipino travelers. Dr. Salvana said the government's immediate quarantine protocols for individuals entering the country helped in containing this virus. Take a look.
Well, sa ngayon, Yusek Rocky, 13 na 13 ang naitatalang cases ng Delta variant sa Pilipinas. Lahat po ito ay returning travelers. Siyam po dyan yung galing dun sa MV Athens Bridge. 4 dun po naging pasyente ko, and isa po ang namatay. Mukhang na iwasan naman natin yung pag-spread sa community for now, although closely minomonitor po ito talaga dahil nakakatakot po talaga ang pinapakita nitong Delta variant sa iba't ibang bansa. Well, yung sa ship naman, yung sa MV Athens Bridge, na-quarantine naman sila pagdating dito at diretso sa ospital at tinest naman po namin bago namin release na negative na po talaga yung kanilang PCR. Yung dun sa iba, naagapan naman po sa sa quarantine protocols natin, yung mga taong na nakitang may Delta variant at so far, fingers crossed po talaga, wala pang ibang nakikitang spread in the community. Well, itong nakikita natin ngayon na yung nakikita natin sa UK, sa US, sa China, sa Indonesia, mukhang ang bilis po talaga kumalat nitong Delta variant. In fact, new cases in the UK, 90% na po are Delta variant. At ang isang nakakabahala dun sa mga partially vaccinated na isang dose pa lang yung nakukuha nila, mukhang less po yung effectiveness. Bagamat protective pa naman kung nakadalawang doses na. Kaya importante po talaga always get the second dose. And ang nakikita rin po is lalong-lalo na dun sa mga area sa China of all places, kung saan nagsimula. Ngayon nagkaroon sila ng outbreak nitong Delta variant. Minsan patong-patong po yung transmissions. May first generation, second generation, third generation transmission. Ang hirap-hirap po mag-contact trace, mukhang mas malubha yung sakit. At akong nga po mismo yung sa aking experience dito sa 4 na inalagaan ko, mukhang they really do have a chance to have more severe disease. Ang tataas po ng mga markers ng pagmamaga, inflammation sa kanila, at yung isa nga po ay tuluyang namatay.
In other news, dozens of poorer countries have had to suspend their coronavirus vaccination programs due to a lack of doses, the WHO says, adding the shortages often cause delays for those waiting for their second dose. Take a look.
At this point, but we have a huge number of countries, Karen, that have had to suspend their rollout of their second doses of vaccine. If I remember correctly, it's over 30 or 40 countries that could have been targeted for second doses of AstraZeneca vaccines, for example, who will not be able to do that. We are now urgently trying to work with AstraZeneca itself, as well as SII, the government of India, to restart those shipments so that we can get those doses, those second doses, into those populations, because we are running to a longer interval than we would have liked in that regard. So it's quite a list of countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, but also parts of Latin America, parts of the Middle East, South Asia, as well, that have all been hit hard by this. Some countries have been particularly hit hard, include those that surrounded India, like Nepal, Sri Lanka, others who suffered a severe wave of disease and were very, very desperately trying to access doses. So we've had quite a substantial problem in this regard.
On Monday, the WHO warned that coronavirus is moving faster than the vaccines and that the G7 nations' vow to provide 1 billion doses for poorer nations is simply not enough. As of Thursday, the COVAX team had provided just 88 million vaccine doses spread out over 131 countries, far less than originally planned.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden announced from the White House that the U.S. has received 300 million vaccine shots administered, but warns that deaths and hospitalizations are rising in areas with low vaccination rates. Take a look.
The deaths and hospitalizations are drastically down in places where people are getting vaccinated. But unfortunately, cases and hospitalizations are not going down in many places in the lower vaccination rate states. They're actually going up in some places. A few days ago, we crossed 600,000. 600,000 Americans dead from COVID. The Delta variant. It's a variant that is more easily transmissible, potentially deadlier, and particularly dangerous for young people. But the good news is we have the solution. The science and the data are clear. The best way to protect yourself against these variants are to get fully vaccinated. I think so because so many people have already been vaccinated, but with the Delta variant can cause more people to die in areas where people have not been vaccinated. Where people have gotten the 2 shots, the Delta variant is highly unlikely to result in anything other than, the existing vaccines are very effective.
The pandemic has killed at least 3,844,390 people worldwide since the virus first emerged in December of 2019, according to an AFP compilation of official data. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the news. A 29-year-old man is dead following a shootout with police on Friday in a remote northern region of the western Canadian province of Alberta, in which a police dog was also killed. Police say the incident began a day earlier near the town of High Prairie when they tried to make a traffic stop. The vehicle fled from police and was found abandoned about a half an hour later. An armed suspect who had several outstanding warrants fled on foot into a nearby wooded area. He was tracked by officers and a police dog, but managed to elude them. During an exchange of gunfire with police, the dog was killed. Police continued to hunt for the gunman and were aided by aircraft. About noon today, they arrested Lionel Ernest Gray. Gray had serious injuries at the time of his apprehension, said RCMP Chief Superintendent Kevin Konetsky. Alberta RCMP Tactical Medics and Alberta Health Services EMS immediately provided medical assistance, though he succumbed to his injuries a short time later. Konetsky says the shooting will be investigated by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. He also added that they are saddened by the on-duty loss of service dog Jago.
Meanwhile, 5 police officers were injured overnight in western France as they broke up a 1,500-strong illegal rave, according to authorities, with one partygoer losing a hand in the clashes. Defying an 11 p.m. coronavirus curfew, the group had attempted to set up the party at a horse racing track near Redon in Brittany. Local Prefect Emmanuel Berthier said they were very violent clashes when 400 police intervened. Berthier said 2 of the injured police officers had to be taken to the hospital in Redon. Other officials told AFP that the group threw Molotov cocktails, balls, and pieces of breeze block. They added that one of the partygoers, a 22-year-old man, had lost a hand in the violence. Local authorities said on Friday issued a legal order against the party, which came 2 days before the coronavirus curfew is set to be lifted as COVID-19 case numbers fall in France. The rave had originally been set up in memory of a young man killed in nearby city Nantes 2 years ago during France's annual nationwide Fête de la Musique celebration. Now, Steve Maya Canico fell into the Loire River when police moved to break up a gathering.
In other news, 2 executives from Hong Kong's pro-democracy Apple Daily appeared in court on charges of collusion and were denied bail after authorities deployed a sweeping security law to target the newspaper, a scathing critic of Beijing. Chief Editor Ryan Lau and CEO Kim Hung are accused of colluding with foreign forces to undermine China's national security over a series of articles that police said called for international sanctions. Chief Magistrate Victor So said they were insufficient grounds for the court to believe that the defendants will not continue to commit acts endangering national security. The 2 will remain in custody until their next court appearance on August 13, as prosecutors said police needed time to examine more than 40 computers and 16 servers seized from the newsroom. The case is the first time political views and opinions published by a Hong Kong media outlet have triggered the security law, which was imposed last year by Beijing to stamp out dissent in the financial hub. Apple Daily and its jailed owner Jimmy Lai have long been thorns with Beijing's side, with unapologetic support for the city's pro-democracy movement and caustic criticism of China's authoritarian leaders. More than 500 police officers raided the paper's newsroom on Thursday. 5 executives were arrested. Lau and Cheung were charged on Friday, while the 3 others were released on bail pending further investigation.
4 people were killed and 4 others seriously injured today after a plane carrying parachutists crashed in Siberia, according to Russian authorities. The L-410 plane carrying 19 people crashed around 10 a.m. local time during a training flight at the Tane airfield in the Siberian region of Kemerovo, also known as Kuzbas, according to authorities. The TASS news agency cited the local prosecutor's office as saying that the failure of one of the plane's engines caused the crash. The committee said it had opened a probe into violation of traffic safety rules and the operation of air transport. Kemerovo Regional Governor Sergei Tsefilyov said on Instagram that of the 19 people on board, 4 had died, 4 were in serious condition, and the other 11 were injured.
Eating less red meat is standard medical advice for preventing colorectal cancer, but the way it causes cells to mutate has remained unclear, and not all experts were convinced there was a strong link. A new paper in the journal Cancer Discovery has now identified specific patterns of DNA damage triggered by diets rich in red meat, further implicating the food as a carcinogen while heralding the possibility of detecting the cancer early and designing new treatments. To address the knowledge gap, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute oncologist Marios Giannakis and his colleagues sequenced DNA data from 900 patients with colorectal cancer who were drawn from a much larger group of 280,000 health workers participating in a years-long studies that included lifestyle surveys. The analysis revealed a distinct mutational signature, a pattern that had never before been identified but was indicative of a type of DNA damage called alkylation. The mutation patterns were strongly associated with the distal colon or the lower part of the bowels that leads to the anal canal, which is where past research suggested colon cancer linked to red meat mostly occurs. Taken as a whole, the multiple lines of evidence build up a compelling argument, according to Giannakis.
In other news, U.S. President Joe Biden gifted Russian President Vladimir Putin a pair of aviator sunglasses made by Randolph Engineering, a Massachusetts-based company. When they met in Geneva, specs of this style are often worn by the military. The company has had a contract with the U.S. Armed Forces since 1978 rather, which buys some 25,000 pairs per month. Take a look.
And let's hope it's the symbol of peace. I know our glasses, President Biden, I'm sure, gave those glasses to President Putin as a symbol of our national heritage, USA-made premium sunglasses, and we hope they're given in good intention. Since 1978, we've been manufacturing military eyewear for the U.S. military under contract.
Day for y'all.
Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Kahit gaano katagal, kahit gaano kadaya ang mundo, ituloy mo may magandang nakaraan sa'yo. Kahit gaano katagal. Hi, I'm Garrison Luis of Inago. Please catch us on Letters and Music this coming Sunday, June 20, 1 to 2 p.m. Only here in Net 25. See ya!
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back to the news. Governor John Bell Edwards has issued a state of emergency due to the potential weather threats associated with potential tropical cyclone 3, a tropical system expected to impact the Gulf Coast this weekend. Take a look.
The expectation is this weather event will be focused on rain, not so much on the wind, although a 35 to 40 mile an hour wind, when you have saturated ground, can easily uproot trees and so forth. So that hazard is still there. And I want to say that because we have rivers that are already high and drainage ditches and that are already full and streams and so forth, a smaller rain than we may have experienced last month could be just as catastrophic. So everybody has to be ready. And I encourage you to please make sure that you're monitoring the news.
The broad area of low pressure is expected to become a tropical or subtropical depression Thursday night or Friday morning. But a report from the USA Today said Tropical Storm Claudette was expected to formulate Friday or early Saturday in the Gulf of Mexico, threatening to bring heavy rain and flooding to the northern Gulf Coast throughout the weekend. If the weather system reaches storm status, it will be named Claudette, the third storm of the 2021 season that began this month. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has predicted 13 to 20 named storms will develop this season. This number includes tropical storms, which contain wind speeds of 39 mph or higher. Storms become hurricanes when winds reach 74 miles per hour.
Drought is on the verge of becoming the next pandemic, and there is no vaccine to cure it. Those are the words from the United Nations. An appeal from Mami Mizuturi, the UN Secretary General Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction, came as the UN agency warned that drought affects more people than any other slow onset disaster. Take a look.
Within the next 80 years, 129 countries will experience increased exposure to drought due to climate change alone. An additional 23 countries due to population growth, and another 38 due to the interaction of population growth and climate change impact. If you just look at these numbers, yes, there's a really big number of countries that will be exposed to increased drought. So this is a global issue, something like we're seeing as a pandemic. Drought can be the next catastrophe, and there is no vaccine. If we do not act now, our exposure to drought risk threatens to derail our progress towards the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
We are seeing in places such as, and these cases are within the report, such as the Danube Basin, droughts, an increasing number of them affecting irrigation, hydropower generation, and most critically, transportation. And we saw that on the Rhine as well itself. The modernized view of drought is that it is not simply agricultural. That in fact, the dimensions that we're seeing, I mean, especially in so-called developed regions, are certainly the impact on the ability to export crops and services, but also the direct impacts on the functioning and the supply chains on which all societies rely.
Prevention has far lower cost in humanitarian, financial, and environmental ways than reaction and response. Drought resilience partnerships at the national and local levels will be critical to managing drought in a warming world where rainfall will become ever more unpredictable.
Global warming has now intensified droughts in southern Europe and Western Africa, the UN report said with some confidence, and the number of victims is set to grow dramatically unless the world acts. About 130 countries could face a greater risk of drought this century under a high emission scenario cited by the UN. It also said another 23 countries will confront water shortages because of population growth, with 38 nations affected by both. Drought, like a virus, tends to last a long time, have a wide geographic reach, and cause knock-on damage.
Tourists visit Death Valley National Park in eastern California, known as the hottest place on Earth. The temperature has hit 128 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 53 degrees Celsius, but the national park spokesperson says it is very early for the middle of June. Take a look.
Man, what is it?
We're standing at a thermometer in front of Furnace Creek Visitor Center in Death Valley. More humidity in Tennessee and Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. It's dry here.
okay, 1, 2, 3. Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth. Our world record is 134 degrees Fahrenheit, but it hasn't been that hot since 1913. Last summer, we hit 130, and yesterday, 125, which is very early for the middle of June.
Well, we're from Michigan, so this is extremely hot for us, and we have a ton of water in the car, Gatorade, and we aren't going to do much out in Death Valley today. Just getting out of the car quick, taking some pictures, and headed on our way to the next stop.
Yeah, I think we cope with it in very small segments.
El paisaje es espectacular, cada punto que ellos tienen es diferente, pero sí, nunca había estado en un lugar tan caliente como este, pero es precioso, precioso.
For the first time in 14 years, the Argentinian province of Cordoba is covered in snow, and surprised locals rush to make the most of the weather, with many seeing snow for the first time ever. Take a look.
Fue una alegría, dando así que todo, viendo la nieve a las 2 de la mañana, y esta mañana cuando nos levantamos vimos toda esta preciosura. Yo hace la primera vez que veo esto, tanta nieve así que muy hermoso todo, y bueno, a disfrutarlo.
Despacito, póngale claro.
Dale.
No, la golpe.
Más o menos. Ahora sí, sacale
Costó.
Con un cambio de clima muy grande, porque hace unos meses atrás estábamos disfrutando de la pileta y ahora estamos armando muñecos de nieve. Así que, bueno, muy agradecidos. Y además, nunca lo hemos vivido, pero sí estuvimos presentes en la de Córdoba hace como 13 años atrás. Pero bueno, fue mucho menor, nada que ver comparado con esto.
The Philippines is eyeing an advanced labor cooperation with Saudi Arabia to uphold and protect the rights of overseas Filipino workers in the Gulf nation, according to Malacanang. The palace said Presidential Assistant on Foreign Affairs Robert Borge, who has been tapped as the Philippines Special Envoy to Saudi Arabia, flew to the Arab state on Friday for an official visit aimed at enhancing the country's bilateral ties and advancing their labor reform cooperation. Duterte, according to Malacanang, has also tasked Borge to deliver a letter addressed to Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the custodian of the two holy mosques. The visit also aims to fulfill Duterte's promise, Kalinga at Malasakit, or care and compassion, for OFWs, especially during the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, according to the palace. This is the second time Borge has been designated a special envoy to Saudi Arabia after he was appointed by Duterte as special envoy to Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Tunisia in 2019. Last month, the Philippine government lifted the temporary suspension of the deployment of Filipino workers to Saudi Arabia. The temporary deployment ban came following initial reports that Filipinos were being required by their employers to shoulder the cost of health and safety protocols for COVID-19 and insurance coverage premium upon entry to Saudi Arabia. The cost of the institutional quarantine and insurance is reportedly 3,500 Saudi riyals, which is equivalent to 47,000 pesos. Also, in a phone conversation last month, Duterte and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud renewed their commitment to further strengthen bilateral relations, including in trade and investments, and intensify the cooperation in migrant workers' rights.
The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, temporarily suspended the deployment of overseas Filipino workers to Oman. The issuance of the resolution was in connection with the directive of Oman's ban on the entry of travelers from the Philippines and other countries. It imposed a ban on the entry of travelers from the Philippines or travelers who passed through the Philippines less than 14 days prior to the application for entry, except for Omani citizens, diplomats, health workers, and their families. Also, the Middle Eastern country has extended the entry ban indefinitely on travelers coming from the Republic of Sudan, Brazil, Nigeria, Tanzania, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, the United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Egypt, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam, including those who transited through these countries 14 days prior to the request to enter the Sultanate. According to Dole, there are some 5,000 OFWs that have been deployed to the host country from January to May this year.
The Bureau of Customs on Friday held the second simultaneous destruction of smuggled motor vehicles this year, involving 21 cars worth 58.55 million pesos in Manila and Cagayan de Oro. In a statement, the Bureau reported that the vehicles destroyed in Manila came from the Manila International Container Port, or MICP, the Port of Manila, or POM, and the Port of Subic. The 7 motor vehicles include a brand new McLaren 620R and a used Hyundai Genesis from POM, used Bentley 2007 and Porsche 911 C2S, and Mercedes-Benz from MICP, and Lotus and Toyota Solara from the Port of Subic, which were gathered and condemned in Port Area, Manila. Meanwhile, 14 knocked down used the Mitsubishi Jeep seized by the Port of Cagayan de Oro were destroyed simultaneously at Diamond Logistics in Baloy, Barangay Tablon. The motor vehicles were shipped into the country by different consignees and seized on separate occasions from 2018 to 2020. The condemnation of the vehicles is pursuant to Presidential Directive 2017-447, in which President Rodrigo Roa Duterte reiterated the need to destroy smuggled vehicles to send the strong message that the government is serious in its efforts against smuggling.
Consumer prices rose slightly in Japan in May for the first time in 14 months, according to data, but analysts said they were unlikely to soar above pre-pandemic levels. Japan has long battled to hit a 2% inflation target, seen as key to turbocharging the world's third largest economy. A barrage of stimulus and monetary easing packages has seen the rate remain stubbornly low. The May increase was still modest, with core consumer prices, excluding volatile fresh food costs, up 0.1% from a year earlier. The rise was largely the result of a rebound in energy prices after oil prices dipped last spring, with knock-on effects for other energy prices.
New Zealand's economy posted better than expected growth of 1.6% in the first quarter of this year, according to official data, with analysts saying activity was back at pre-coronavirus levels. The expansion in January to March this year exceeded forecasts of a 0.5% rise and reversed a 1.0% contraction in the final quarter of 2020. Statistics New Zealand said the figures meant the economy grew 2.4% in the 12 months to the end of March, driven by spending on hospitality and big-ticket retail goods such as television and cars. New Zealand has largely contained the coronavirus with no recent community transmission and just 26 deaths in a population of 5 million, allowing minimal day-to-day restrictions.
We now go to Barcelona, where the Philippine Consulate General has recently been inaugurated in time for the commemoration of the Philippines' 123rd year of independence. Here's Beverly Madrid.
We are here in the inauguration of the Philippine Consulate General in Barcelona, Spain. This event is headed by His Excellency Ambassador Philip J. Louvier with Consul General Maria Teresa S.M. Lazaro. In accordance with the celebration of the 123rd anniversary of the Philippines Independence Day and the Philippine-Spanish Friendship Day, the Philippine Consulate General was re-inaugurated at its new office in Barcelona together with the consular staff and guests. In the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Philippine Ambassador Philip J. Louvier and Consul General Maria Teresa S.M. Lazaro were joined by the Catalonia local government officials as guests of honor, such as Government Subdelegate in Barcelona Carlos Prieto, Barcelona 3rd Deputy Mayor Laia Bonet, and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Transparency Victoria Alsina. The Philippine Consulate General in Barcelona was first inaugurated on June 12, 2008, but forced closure was initiated in 2012 due to budgetary restraints, which caused the Filipino community in Barcelona to start a petition to reopen the Philippine Consulate because it would be inconvenient for the Filipinos living in Barcelona to go to the Philippine Embassy in Madrid. The Philippine Consulate was run by honorary consuls from its closure until Foreign Affairs Secretary of the Philippines, Teodoro Locsin Jr., announced that the Consulate General would reopen to continue the country's diplomatic mission in Barcelona. According to Consul General Lazaro, who assumed the position on March 2021, the Consulate General aims to make the consular services more accessible to the greater public, aside from launching future projects to promote Filipino culture.
We also plan to inaugurate the Central Rizal this year. We want to make it as a platform for frequent exchanges and to between Filipinos and Spanish nationals in order to promote Philippine interests, Philippine history and culture in particular, and for it to serve as a bridge between the Philippines and second and third generation Filipinos to reconnect them to the motherland.
The reopening of the Philippine Consulate General means creating a presence and stressing the ties that had already existed and that have never ceased to remain between Philippines and Spain. Carlos Prieto, government subdelegate in Barcelona, emphasized that the Filipino community is a very pacific, very supportive, and hard-working community.
So we are thrilled to reopen this General Consulate in Barcelona. We want to use this as an opportunity to strengthen the relationships between both communities at all levels, at the institutional levels, between companies, and especially with the community. We are very much happy to welcome you in Barcelona.
It's really good news to have the General Consulate reopening in Barcelona. That means a lot for us, for our city, because it means the strategic commitment of the Philippines with our city. And I would say, moreover, which is more important for us, it means a lot for the Filipino community in Barcelona. With the General Consulate, they will have better services, proximity services. And this is very important when you have a very active community, because the Filipino community is very active, very committed to our city, very committed to the social fabric of our city. That means that they are rooted to our city, and having the General Consulate means a lot for them.
Reporting from Barcelona, Spain, I'm Beverly Madrid. We live in interesting times.
Tokyo will cancel all public Olympics viewing events in an effort to reduce the risk of coronavirus infections, the city governor said today. Having postponed the games for a year because of the pandemic, Japan has already banned overseas spectators in an Olympic first, while reducing the number of participants, volunteers, and guests. However, officials are forging ahead with hosting the games from July 23rd. There had been 6 planned viewing sites across the Japanese capital. Politicians and organizers are pushing for some spectators to be allowed. But Japan's top infectious disease experts have urged them to consider holding the games behind closed doors. Japan has had a comparatively small virus outbreak with just over 14,000 deaths despite avoiding harsh lockdowns. The government has recently accelerated vaccination efforts with just over 6% of the population fully jabbed.
A piece of art weaving together one of the great statesmen of the 20th century, an icon of the jet set and the world's first super yacht, will go under the hammer at New York auction house Phillips on June 23. Take a look.
So this is one of these rare occasions where world history and art history come together. The mode at Breckles, 1921, Winston Churchill. It's a painting that basically stayed with Churchill for 40 years, and in 1961 he gives the painting as a token of friendship to Aristotle Onassis. Onassis, who's very proud of it and very proud of his friendship with Churchill, hangs it at the main salon of the Christina, the world's first super yacht, and there it's hanging together with a Vermeer, El Greco, Gauguin, and a Pissarro. So it was in great company. The Onassis' yacht, the Christina, was the world's first super yacht. It started her life as a frigate for the Canadian Navy and participated in the Normandy landing. After the war, Onassis buys the boat for $34,000 and refurbishes it for $4 million. It was, one of the most incredible structures ever floated. It was almost 100 meters long. It was the
That was beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, hopefully we get to see that in person very soon.
I know. I hope we get to go to the museum soon.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We reported a lot of new shows coming in this weekend, so that should occupy our weekend, right, Alma?
That's
I'm
right.
CJ Hero. Join us, please, on Monday.
And check out our news on our website at eaglenews.ph. And also log on to our YouTube channel and watch all our news items there. Thank you very much for joining us. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we
live in interesting times.